I want to go right now to Mike Pompeo, of course, the former Secretary of State. Secretary, it's always good having you, and thank you for joining us. Secretary, we're learning right now that Vladimir Putin is telling the leaders in France and Germany that Russia is willing to discuss ways to make it possible for Ukraine to export grain, foodstuffs from Black Sea ports under their control right now, the Russian soldiers' control. Do you believe them?
Oh, goodness, I don't know what to believe. We know that something like that the devil sits in Moscow, but it will also be in the details of that kind of thing. Putin's not going to do that for free. He's not going to do it out of the goodness of his heart because he cares about the Ukrainian people or, frankly, for anyone else. If he were to strike such a deal, it would be there'd be a big ask from Moscow. I don't know what that could possibly be. I suspect that there's not going to be much to this.
Yeah, I think the big ask is that they get some sanctions relief. That doesn't appear likely, but what do you make of Russia's position right now and where they are all these many months into this war that they had hoped would wrap up in a matter of days?
There's no doubt, Neil, that this hasn't gone the way Vladimir Putin hoped it would go. They're struggling mightily. I saw this morning the reporting that they've taken some more small cities, but that's not remotely what he had hoped he would achieve. But that doesn't change a single thing about his intentions, though, Neil. This is what I think the whole world needs to stay tuned for. Everyone's looking for a way that this will end. It's already not being covered as much in the news. Vladimir Putin's not going to change. His desire for greater Russia is not going to change. He may be thwarted. He may be stopped. He may even look for an exit ramp. That exit ramp, Neil, is just going to be stopped to get gas and a snack. He is determined to do precisely what he's been after for 20 years, and it will take the West. Europe should lead, but it's going to take American leadership, too. As you know, these things don't just stay in Kyiv and Moscow. They're impacting the whole world.
They are indeed. One of the things that I found striking in President Zelensky's remarks about the motivations of the Russians and what keeps them going, that they want to wage a war right now that they don't want to end. He was specifically referring to military leaders in Russia and, more to the point, Vladimir Putin, that it isn't in his interest to end it right now. It isn't in Putin's interest, he's saying. Do you agree with that?
I do think that's true. He's got a lot of staying power. He doesn't have very much in terms of domestic political constraints. We always think, gosh, if you lose 10 or 15,000 of your soldiers, that would have a huge risk to your regime, to your leadership. In the United States, we lose a single soldier. We lose 13 soldiers in Afghanistan, and it diminishes you in the eyes of the people. Not true in Russia. They're hearing a different story. They're singing a different tune. And Vladimir Putin is determined that he can outlast the West, that Europe will go away. Some European businessmen will just want to make a lot of money, and these sanctions will be lifted, and Putin will be permitted to continue to move freely across Europe in the way that he's wanted to for so long. I hope that that's not the case, but Putin believes that the West is weak and won't stay at this.
Isn't the only way for this to end, at least for the time being, Secretary, for the Russian people to say, this is ridiculous. Enough with the long lines waiting outside banks, if they're lucky to be open at all. Enough with the empty grocery store shelves and the rocketing food prices and the collapsing ruble, and enough with all of that. Whatever they're hearing or not hearing on the war front, they're seeing for themselves in the country, aren't they?
Well, you came from a financial background, right? You know this. The ruble hasn't collapsed. We've got store shelves in the United States of America that aren't stocked today. The Russian people are pretty used to this. I don't see that causing Vladimir Putin to stop. His determination will continue. He's wanted this for 2 decades. He's going to stay at this until the costs on him and those around him are too high. And we have the tools to do that. We've simply chosen not to use them. When the ruble's where it is today, it tells you that the sanctions aren't particularly effective at impacting the lives of the oligarchs around Vladimir Putin. Those will be the kinds of things that cause Putin to slow down or at least stop for a little bit. I can't imagine that the Russian people could pull it off. I pray that I'm wrong. I pray that one day the Russian people will be able to actually convince him to change his ways.
I don't know if there would ever be a Mussolini-type overthrow or an attempt, as there were several to overthrow out of Hitler, but that doesn't seem immediately likely. Then there's the issue, Secretary, about Vladimir Putin's health. What do we know about that? Does this explain his thinking or violent nature now? What?
The truth is, Neil, I don't know much more than you read in the press about his health. I knew some of his health history from the time when I was CIA director. Most folks that get to his age have lots of nicks and dings. I'll say this. My experience when I was the CIA director and as Secretary of State is that we over-predicted the death of bad guys an awful lot. The Ayatollah was going to pass. Maduro was on his last legs. Right? We just over-predict this a lot. We shouldn't count on the good Lord to solve this problem for us. We should count on resolve and determination and deterrence of the American people and of the West to solve this problem.
Are you surprised? I know you harken back to interest in money matters, Secretary, but I know Russia just cut interest rates. You usually do that in the face of a slowdown in an economy that's in trouble. But to your point, these sanctions haven't done nearly the harm that maybe Western powers, maybe the White House had hoped. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think that's true. Sanctions are tough, Neil. We use them a lot, too. They take enormous breadth. The sanctions have to be really broad. And then powerful enforcement, something that I don't think the administration has fully engaged in. And then they take time. They take an awful lot of time to begin to have the desired effect. They don't happen in days or weeks or months. This Russian economy will prove to be pretty resilient. They will go to a resistance economy. And while it'll slow down, the whole globe's economy, it looks to be headed for a recession. It'll slow down. It'll get tougher, but probably not at the level the Biden team had hoped it would, and certainly not on the timeline that the world would hope it would as well.
I know it's a little early right now, Secretary, but a lot of people not only looking at a midterm election year, but the next big election, the presidential election, a lot of people say you're interested in running for president. If that is the case, would you run whether Donald Trump were running or not?
The Pompeos will decide whether or not we're going to. So we're going to continue this fight based on if we think this is something that we can do with elan and excellence in a way that would be deserving of the American people. We'll sort that out. I'm incredibly focused on what we're going to do in November. It's looking pretty good. I've worked on redistricting. Got a big win in Ohio this week. Good for the American people. Good for the people of Ohio. I'm pretty focused on 2022. I think we're going to have a great election because the American people can see we're headed in the wrong direction.
You do have, an impressive bench of potential presidential candidates, yourself included. The reason why I mentioned whether you would consider that, your family notwithstanding, whether Donald Trump does or not, I get the feeling that people like Chris Christie, maybe even Ron DeSantis in Florida, would run no matter what he decides to do. Does that enter into the equation for you or your family?
Nah, Neil, look, if you believe you're the right person for America, you should run.
Okay, there you go. That's a very nice way of handling that, and I like that very much. Secretary, always good seeing you. Thank you very, very much.
Sir.
Mike
Have
Pompeo.
a good rest of your day.
All right, you too. A safe weekend. The former Secretary of the United States under President Trump, Mike Pompeo.